one of the core protocols at the Connection Codes is that emotions happen to you. You don't get to choose when or what emotion hits, and they can come at unexpected places, unexpected times, and take you back even decades before. And so today, Phyllis is going to share a story, an example of something she just experienced yesterday of a moment that an emotion happened to her out of the blue, and what that felt like, what that looked like, and what happened for her in that moment. So welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open the emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in our relationships and in ourselves. I'm your host, Tera, and joining me is marriage and family therapist, clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his incredible wife, Phyllis. And together, they have founded the Connection Codes, which is the guide to human connection. And we're so glad you're here.
Yes. Hello, world.
Hi, friends. So we just had an amazing 3 days in New York City with dear friends, Haley and Nathan, and they planned the whole thing. So we just got to show up, and they literally every minute of the day they planned. And it was so fun for me, especially because I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to worry about where we were going or how we were getting there. I didn't have to make any decisions. So it was very fun. And kind of what I want to share was an experience I had that was so unexpected. And at the last minute, Haley and I added another Broadway play. So we had already done one opera, 2 Broadway plays.
Oh, wow.
And then this was our last day before going to the airport. She said, I think we can fit in one more. So Glenn and Nathan went to a museum, and Haley and I went to another play. And she said, you'll love it, I think. She didn't really know much, but she said it's a romantic comedy. And I thought, well, that's kind of fun. I'm all about that. So let's go to this romantic comedy. And the name of the Broadway play is Left on 10th, and it's a memoir. So I already know, okay, this is their journey. This is their story. And we got last minute seats by going up to the box office. And so that was exciting for me because they were just cheap compared to what we'd paid for the other stuff.
And what row were you on?
We were on the fourth row.
Fourth row.
Oh, wow.
Fourth row. And so, I mean, you really saw the people's faces and expressions and the whole thing. It was beautiful. So to tell you a little bit about the play, which I think was kind of what threw me right away, is, well, it's funny in the first few minutes. It's a Verizon phone call scene that is hilarious and so relatable. I'm like, oh, yes, this is so real. This is what happens when you try to get on the phone with Verizon. So it was very funny to start with. And then you realize very quickly that she's a widow and her husband has died recently. So first, it pulls you in with that. And I think for me, it was just the reality of her sharing the grief and how much she misses him. So I'm already getting a little bit like, ooh, that's just so relatable. And she was and is my age. And so he was Glenn's age, and that unexpected. You don't really think you're going to become a widow in your 60s. And so I think processing it through my own, what would this feel like for me? And it just felt in that way really real. So I'm already, dabbing my eyes and kind of going, okay, where's this romantic comedy? But of course, as the story unfolds, there's a widower that has recently lost his wife, and he reaches out to her via email. And so their relationship starts through email, and it's done very well, and it's very fun and funny. And you see how she's very hesitant to get involved in a relationship because you have to be brave to do that. You've already grieved and loved well once. And so you're like, do I really want to take another chance on another relationship? And so she is hesitant, but he's very charming and very likable. And it was funny because he was a therapist and he loves the opera. So again, oh my word, Glenn is a therapist and Glenn loves opera. So there were some parts of the story that felt so real to me. So I'm already, again, a little bit probably just emotionally invested. So I'm aware of that. Well, then the story takes a twist, which even my friend Haley had no idea, that then she is diagnosed with cancer. So I'm like, ooh, this is too close to home. As many of you know, our Megan has cancer. So I'm like, wow, Haley, really? And of course, Haley had no idea. So she's just like checking on me like, oh, I didn't know. And I'm like, I get that. And then it's interesting because we actually met up with our friend Susie, we met for lunch first before going to the play. And Susie told us her sister-in-law just got diagnosed with cancer. So we had just kind of done this thing over lunch. And then we go into this Broadway play and it's like, ooh, this is really close to home. So I'm just dabbing my eyes as I'm doing right now on the podcast. But I'm like, okay, this is life. Cancer's real, right? Many of us have cancer stories and we deal with cancer. So this is done beautifully. Like these actors do a phenomenal job showing the fear and then the hope and then the pain, the process of chemo and what that does. It's just beautifully done. But she gets through the first set of chemo and they're like, hey, it worked and you're great. And so life is good. And they travel and he's still living in LA. She's living in New York. And they just kind of see each other a lot, go back and forth. But then, I don't know, I can't remember in the play how much longer it was before she was diagnosed again. And this time it was like, chemo is not, that nothing will help except a bone marrow transplant. And she already knew because her sister had died of the same disease. There is not a match. There's not a donor. But they did an experimental thing that is done with umbilical cords. But what was interesting to me, this is a little side note, but I thought so powerful, is because her sister had already died, she just took that on herself as in, I know that I'm going to die and I only have 2 months to live. And then this new romance in her life, this boyfriend says, you are not your sister. And then close friends were saying the same thing, that you're not your sister. Your sister's outcome does not have to be your outcome. And so there were some really powerful and touching moments, but how much, like it takes a lot of courage to believe that your outcome can be different. It takes faith to believe your outcome can be different. It takes, that mindset. And so she went for the bone marrow transplant or however that procedure was. And it was very intense. So this part of the play was so intense. And because it didn't go well, as far as her body and what it did, and she wanted to die, and she asked her closest people, like, let me die. I just want to die. Of course, they would not let her die. But at this moment, she's in the hospital and he comes in on a good day. She's having a good day. So this must be a little bit earlier in the process of this new treatment. And he goes, let's get married. She looked at him and she was like, when and where? And he goes, right here in the hospital right now. I lost it. And the reason I lost it is because my niece got married in the hospital right before she died. And Echo and I were there. And this was about 9 years ago.
Wow.
But this was the moment that this is the whole podcast, is emotion happens to you. My body reacted to that scene like it was 9 years ago.
Wow.
And Haley did not know what was happening. And she turned and I was weeping. And she was precious because she just held my leg and she held my hand. And, of course, she's not having the same reaction because, yes, it's a touching moment, but it's not a cry, like lose it moment. And it was not even presented that way. Like in the play, it was a beautiful, happy moment in a sense. But for my body, it took me back to that moment in time where my niece, I can still picture it. Like they gave us a little room in the hospital where they allowed, a cake to be brought in and for her to invite her friends, family members, or whoever. And it was like such a crazy moment for me because it was so out of the blue, so unexpected, and not a memory I've had in a very long time. That was a very sad time when my niece died of cancer. That was a very sad time. But it's not like it's a grief that I carry or even think about very often, right?
Yeah.
And so for it to be brought back at such an intensity in a Broadway play, so out of the blue, it was like, oh my word.
Wow.
What an incredible example of how emotion happens to you. And I loved my friend's reaction because being right there at the front, it's not like she could talk to me, but it's the power of touch, right? Just her holding my hand and touching my leg. It was so reassuring. I wanted to tell her what was happening, but again, you're in a place where talking is not the best thing. But afterwards, I was just like, wow, that was just unbelievable to me. Like how that can happen. And, we met for dinner after we met Haley's husband and then Glenn. So we met them before going to the airport. And it was like sharing it with them as well of just how interesting, because you think about, okay, what are our reactions? So often in situations where high emotion happens that no one else is experiencing. So one person is experiencing it. And I think that so often people want to fix, reassure, of course, the whole you're okay expression or, oh my word, that was such a long time ago. Like how crazy. Or sometimes there's even judgment, where it's like, whoa. Maybe you've got some unprocessed trauma there. And it's like, I don't need judgment on that. I just felt it really strongly and I needed to. And it was so beautiful to be allowed to just sit there and just cry, and to feel that so strongly. I just think that at times we have a hard time even with the concept of emotion happens to you. And it comes up in conversation. I know we've had several just in the last week of that idea. I know we get emails, I think we got one recently from a, connection coder whose spouse is like, you shouldn't be sad about that. You should just choose to be happy. There's often that sounds probably in some ways logical because we've heard it so much.
Yeah.
But then when you have an experience like what I just had yesterday, it's like, such a reminder of how our body stores emotion. And then it just comes at you like a freight train, even if no one else around you is experiencing it at all.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that's a really good reminder. And I remember learning the connection codes initially, that being like one of the things that felt freeing to me. It felt like, oh, okay, I don't choose when I'm feeling shame or sad or this really into anger. I love anger. It's my favorite. And so but I can also go to anger very, very quickly, but it is what I do with it that makes the difference. And so it's like that next action, but knowing that it happens to me, it was a really like light bulb moment for sure. And then it also kind of helped me to get down to the belief underneath it at times or to the thought around it at times. And then also the non-judgment for myself at times as well, because I definitely have felt shame for having emotion. Like even having the emotion brought more emotion of shame. And I've experienced that even recently. So just to be able to really acknowledge that. And I think the key here for me and thinking about our listeners is really recognizing that for our partners. That email that you just mentioned, we tell each other, you shouldn't feel that. Or that was a long time ago. I know that is said in homes regularly. Why are you still upset about something that I said to you 6 months ago, 4 years ago, well, it's still embedded in there. And that emotion is happening in real time as if it just happened yesterday.
Yeah, I'm always, aware of the macro, the big picture. And you mentioned, the Connection Codes protocol, emotion happens to you. You're not responsible for your emotion. You are responsible for your next action. And even, I've heard you say it before, which I think so. And even that, your go-to emotion is anger. Well, you don't choose that. That's just what happens. Mm-hmm. And anger is not good, bad, right, or wrong. It just is. It just exists. And anger so often, I don't know if it's always, but so often is a response to pain.
Yeah.
So the message of pain is there's a problem. Mm-hmm. The message of anger is power up. We're going to do something about the problem. Good. I'm glad Tera feels anger. Now I want her to figure out what the solution to the problem is, not just, the secondary anger, just to explode and throw things or whatever. Yeah. Have you ever thrown stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, you have? Okay. Yeah. I couldn't remember.
When I was a little kid, I have a very vivid memory. Like, it still haunts me about throwing something. Yeah. But out of anger, like that one, it still haunts me.
But as an adult?
As an adult, probably, nothing like at anybody or anything like that.
Yeah,
but
that's Wes. I don't know if I believe.
Yeah.
You probably blocked it. Anyway, that's the point. So, I'm not trying to get, Tera to go to anger management classes so she can, manage her. No, I want her to grab the anger and go, what's happening here? What am I missing? Let me figure this out so that anger can serve its purpose and get you powered up to do something about whatever the pain, the fear, or whatever it is. And then the other Connection Codes protocol, especially the second half of it that we so often don't say, we say the first part all the time, is that the brain doesn't distinguish physical pain from emotional pain, except over time. And when you hurt yourself, you cut your hand, it hurts like crazy, and you deal with it. Well, that pain begins to dissipate pretty quickly. And maybe it spikes a little in the afternoon, and then it feels fine. In the middle of the night, you bang it on the side of the bed or on Wes's head, and it hurts again. But it starts dissipating pretty quickly. And so within a day, 2 days, 3 days, it's pretty much gone. And a month later, and there may be a scar, but you virtually are never even aware of it anymore. That's not true of emotional pain. Emotional pain literally can increase if it's not processed properly, and at any point it can get reactivated, and just like that. Phyllis, I probably had not thought about your niece in a bit.
Oh,
Certainly not in that way. Mm-hmm. It's like, what the heck happened? Well, of course, this play brought that back to her. And for me to say to her, oh, no, you, that should be gone. That should be done. And we're very close with Haley and Nathan and their mega connection coders. And so when she was telling us about it, I was being a smart ass, and I was just saying, well, you shouldn't, what did I say to you? Well, you need to control that sadness. You need to control that emotion or something. And, we're just all laughing because they know I'm being a goof. But how absurd that is. And yet that's what we do. Phyllis says, I felt so much sadness during this play thinking about my niece. And in various ways, our response is, oh, what? No, you shouldn't feel sad. You need to control that emotion. You need to, get over that emotion. You need to join a class, join a support group so that you don't experience that emotion. And of course, as connection coders, and Haley and Nathan were slightly abusive of me because I was being a smart aleck and saying those things to Phyllis. But that's ridiculous to say you're not supposed to be feeling sad. You're not supposed to be experiencing pain, because that was 9 years ago. Well, she's not trying to feel sadness. She just does. And so instead, we're just present with her. She processes through it. And again, it may happen again tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. We don't care. It doesn't matter. We're just going to be present with her, process that through with her. So I think people forget that emotional pain actually often increases. It's difficult to compare the present to the past, but for all I know, Phyllis experienced more pain, more sadness yesterday about her niece than she did 9 years ago. When it happened. I don't know. And again, it's hard to compare and to know exactly, to quantify it.
Well, that is interesting, because I would say at the wedding in the hospital, and, she couldn't even walk. She was brought in with a wheelchair. I don't remember crying in that setting. Everyone, I think, was trying to be very celebratory for sure.
Right, yeah.
But still, even visiting her in the hospital, I definitely don't remember crying the way I did yesterday in that play. And that was what was so intense for me, is that it just came out of nowhere. And just like, wow. And it was almost like, I don't know, the way I experienced it, and some of you listeners probably can't even relate to this. I can scare easily, as in if Glenn comes out of a room and I don't know he was in that room, I can jump a mile high and scream and hit him and hit
Glenn.
Yes, all in one split second. Yeah. And I've been this way since you've met me. And it is just, it's almost comical, you would think, in how I react.
Unless you're getting hit.
Right. But it's like such a quick response, right? And it comes out of nowhere. Like, I'm not expecting that for him to scare me. He's not even trying to. He was just in a room and I didn't realize he was in there or whatever. I just jump and yell and hit all in one split second. And that intensity, as far as it just came out of nowhere yesterday, it was almost like it took my breath away. It was so intense. And it was startling to Haley. She reacted and looked at me like I had just been hit by a meteor, right? Like, she looked at me like, what is happening? And then she just held my hand, which was beautiful, and touched my leg, which was, it was just squeezed my leg. It was just beautiful. But I'm like, wow, that is emotioning happening to you kind of moment.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I do think about that with how many emails we get, which we love. We love your emails. And I know
when they're nice. I'm going to say
true.
that.
Okay. That's true.
Forward the email ones to Glenn, please, not to me.
Yes, that's true.
I just know something's happening for the person.
I know.
And they didn't get up that morning and say, I'm going to be a bad, mean person today. Something funky happened to them. Okay. So meanwhile, while they're at the play, Nathan and I went off to the Metropolitan Art Museum, which was spectacular. You can spend 3 weeks there, I think, pretty easily. So, but right before we went in, we stopped at a street vendor and I got a gyro, which the guy insisted that I call it gyro, which hurt my heart a little bit. But anyway, so we're standing and it's raining. And so we're under these umbrellas. And Nathan, at one point, kind of put his foot up on this little bench. And it's a huge stone slab. So it's not like it's a bench. But there's a guy sitting there, probably, I don't know, 1.5 feet, 2 feet away from him. And, I don't know this guy's story. And he has headphones in. But he turns and says something like, I don't appreciate you getting your dirty feet on my seat or my bench or something. But he kind of mumbled it. And so we didn't fully understand it. But Nathan moves his foot. And Nathan said, oh, sorry, I can give you more space or something. And, I think the guy assumed that we were just jerks and, going to counterattack or something. Although I'm sure he felt attacked because Nathan put his foot on the bench. So anyway, and again, the guy's mumbling, so we didn't catch everything that he said. But the last sentence we heard very, very distinctly. So Nathan and I finished eating, and I said, well, let's head into the museum. And the guy turns. It's such a quotable quote. And I'm going to give him credit. I'll pay him royalties if I need to, if it's his original quote. But he said, I wish you both vicious and efficient deaths.
Wow.
And Nathan and I both smiled and said, thank you. And we just walked away. And I'm thinking, I don't know his story. I don't know anything about him. You just saw him there. But something funky happened to this dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't know us. Now, for all he knows, we're horrible serial killers and we're the most wretched humans on the planet. But he felt whatever, wounded, fear, something because of Nathan's foot. Again, it's not that Nathan was dancing on the bench with muddy shoes, but he just felt something, pain, felt threatened or something. And then he's reacting, and we're going to do another podcast on this very thing, that he's reacting from this attack, which is what he's experiencing. He's reacting from this pain. I would suggest probably a bit of unprocessed pain from his past. And so now he wishes us both. And of course, I'm the innocent victim here, as usual. I had nothing to do with anything. But he wishes us both vicious and efficient deaths, which I feel like efficient was kind of grace on his part.
Yeah, that's kind.
I think you'd want to protract it. Yeah. But anyway, whatever. So Nathan, felt a little bit more pain just from his response. I'm just fascinated. I'm fascinated by human behavior. And I didn't know if the guy would stab us. And as I walked away, I looked behind me about 20 times. And I finally told Nathan, I said, dude, if this guy follows us, I'm probably not going to tell you because you can outrun me. So I'm just going to quickly start moving away.
Wow.
And of course, I quoted Dumb and Dumber, where you learn most important things from life. And like I said, if he comes after us, I'm going to be like, Harry and Lloyd in the diner with Flo. But anyway, so all this stuff's happening for this poor guy. And again, I don't know his story, but he did not plan when he was 10 to be this vicious, cruel, unkind person. There's a whole bunch of things that added up in his life that equaled what he experiences now.
Yeah.
And his unkindness and I would suggest Nathan and I are very, very kind people, but he doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And the fact that Nathan put his foot on the bench. So anyway, it's just so intriguing to me to watch the emotional functionings of humans. And if we can remember that, and the big takeaway from all of this for me, maybe the first fundamental connection codes tool is to learn to ooh people, learn to be present with them. Phyllis experienced what she experienced.
Yeah.
And I know it's in a play, so Haley isn't allowed to be audible. She's not supposed to talk during the play. But Haley's just present with her.
Yeah.
You know, Haley's not going, Phyllis, we need to exit. We need to get you some help. We need to get you out of this. No, Phyllis is experiencing a tremendous amount of sadness. She just is. We don't have to shoot her. We don't have to tell her she's not allowed to experience that. She just is. And again, I know it wasn't audible, but Haley's just oohing her, just being present with her. And again, a weird situation with this guy on the bench. But I just want to ooh him and go, oh, wow, dude, what? I think I might be missing something. And Nathan actually said that to him when the guy first kind of got antagonistic. Nathan said, did I miss something with you here? And the guy was not receptive at all, which is fine. And it's a brief encounter. But for us just to be able to ooh each other, just to go, wow, what you're experiencing is very different than what I'm experiencing. But I'm not judging. I may not even get it. We don't even use that phrase much that, I get that. A lot of times we don't. I don't get that. I get you, and I get that you're experiencing that, but I don't experience it that way. And that's true for all of us. There's so many things about me that Phyllis doesn't get. It makes no sense to her. She couldn't possibly feel joy about that, or conversely pain. And, vice versa, because I might have gone to the play and I have no idea. Certainly not been moved to the extent that she was.
Yeah.
So just accept each other, just be able to ooh each other.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I do want to say one thing about that last sentence before we go into the core emotion wheel, because for me, the connection codes actually has made me understand people better. I actually do now when like Phyllis says, I feel sad about something, I do get that. I don't get the logistics. I've never walked in those shoes, anything like that. But like her saying, I feel sad about my niece's death, after this really traumatic event, I get the sadness. Like my body can feel that sadness. And so that's actually something I love about the connection codes is because I do see and understand humans so much better than I did before.
Yeah, and I think that's the brilliance. I just love that you even pointing that out because, and that's our whole thrust with the connection codes is let's just be present with each other in their emotional experience. Right. We may not get the logistics. The logistics, they exist, they matter, but they're rarely the point. And for me to get that's a sad experience for this other person. It's a fear experience. I know fear. Now I don't feel fear about that, but
I get that. I get that fear. Yeah. Cool. All right. No, thank you for sharing that story and experience. I know that so many people do get what that feels like as far as being hit with an intense emotion out of nowhere. And I would probably also guess that many of them were met with judgment, were met with a lot of pain. And that still may feel like pain in your body. Just the response from the other person may be something that you think about. And so we are going to now go into the 4-minute tool that Dr. Glenn and Phyllis created. So we actually can understand these emotions that are hitting us. Phyllis yesterday could understand what was happening in her body. It wasn't a guess to her. She could pinpoint the sad, and then she could go back underneath it. And the message of sad, Echo did such a great job coming on and explaining all these. The messages of sad is the message is something is missing or damaged. The need is I need to acknowledge this grief. And that's exactly what Phyllis was able to give herself yesterday to acknowledge that grief.
And I do have to interject because it's just so powerful. And I do have so much sadness and guilt and shame that for so many years with her, and it was from a good intention. I'm not saying it's a bad, wicked Glenn that was doing it, but but I didn't want her to be sad. I didn't want her to feel pain.
Right.
I adore her. I cared about her pain. So let me fix it for you. And it just doesn't work. It actually makes it worse. And, we've all three talked many times about the connection codes allowed us to relax into our humanness. And it's just for me to be able to and go, oh, so you really get flooded with sadness in that. Dang, I hear you. I hear you. So what do you need? Nothing. I just need to process it. Got you. And just how, we connection codes protocol, slower is faster. If we slow down now, whatever that's been 24 hours, a little less 24 hours, now that's not stuck for Phyllis. And she may process that 15 times in the next few days or week. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me how many times it happens. All that matters is that she's able to process it.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So who wants to do the wheel
So can we do an issue-specific wheel about our New York trip?
Sure. You go first.
Okay.
That's a great
I'll
idea.
go first. Goodness, so much joy. It was just amazing being away. Of course, being with Haley and Nathan, they just adore us. We adore them. It's just really, really special. I felt a lot of joy getting to go to the opera. I just love opera. And the Met, oh my word, it's just so nth degree. They built a freaking house for this. It's just amazing. Let's see. Sadness yesterday. And Nathan told me I had to stunt double it because the best meal I had our whole trip was at the airport when we're right before we're getting off the plane. And Nathan's like, no, you're not allowed to experience joy about that. You're not allowed to communicate joy about it. It was pretty funny. And we were just all laughing. But it was unbelievable, this noodle shop that I went to. That was so amazing. Let's see. Some fear. Felt fear with the guy on the bench because, I don't know. Does he have a knife? Is he going to stab me? And he's verbally threatening, but he wasn't threatening at all. But I did feel some fear. There are a few subway rides. I felt some fear. Even getting on and off the subway. But a lot of fear that the three of you were going to get on the subway and then the door would close. Like, well, it's the last time we'll ever see Glenn. He's history. Which didn't happen. You were very aware of me, which I appreciate. Let's see. Guilt and shame that I'm just clueless so much. Being with Nathan yesterday, I'm capable if I really, really focus on finding direction, but it was all on Nathan. And he's not great with direction, so we did get in plenty of steps. So a lot of joy about that. I never had to worry about meeting my goal for the day because we blew that out. Let's see. Some loneliness yesterday with the guy on the bench because I thought, is anybody aware of us here? Are we in danger? Are we being threatened? Some hurt. Let's see. The last time I felt hurt. Gracious. This is weird because I didn't feel hurt with that guy at all. Wow. The last time I felt hurt. I can't think of anything recent. Well, actually, at one point, I hit myself on something. So there was some physical hurt in that. Guilt, shame, fear. If I covered everything, joy.
Say
anger. I did feel some anger with this guy on the bench. Not towards him, but just thinking, what happened? And I don't know his story at all. So I have no idea what his life situation is. For all I know, he's a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I don't know. I doubt it, but it could be. But just anger is like, man, we societally are so prejudicial and so pejorative and so judgmental. And I think, I don't know the guy's story, but I'm 99.100% sure that he has been judged thousands of times. He has maybe never been embraced physically, emotionally, so that he has teamship. So he has people around him who are helping him in life. We all need that. He's not a special case. He's not high maintenance. But if he hasn't experienced that over and over and over and over and over and over again, over days, weeks, months, and years, that's how he ends up hoping that we experience a vicious and efficient death. And I feel so much anger that we've missed so badly. Not recent. This is, I think, centuries. I don't really even know. This is my field. I study it all the time, but we've missed on this for a long time. I think I'm over 2 minutes. I do feel a lot of anger about that.
Thank you. Okay, let's see if I can do mine in 2 minutes or less. Lots of joy being on a trip where I didn't have to think about anything. It was super fun. Every part of it was so fun. Hurt, I would say mine was physical, just being aware of my legs and how many miles we walked and having to deal with the pain in that. I think I do feel guilt and shame being aware that I'm holding everyone up. I had lots of stops and, sit down on benches because I couldn't keep up. So definitely guilt and shame in that. My sad was definitely huge in that play yesterday. And we also went and saw Our Town, which had just some real sad points. So that was some of the sad. Let's see. Lonely. I think in those moments, like lonely at times is that I'm the one, everyone else has so much go power. Like they could walk miles and miles and miles. And I'm like, oh, I feel alone in my struggle. What else is there? Fear. I think definitely had to process fear before the trip started with just, will I be able to keep up or will I not? Right. So there was fear throughout that too. Just, can I do this? And then anger. One of the things of just being aware all around me of, and I think that's for me, that anger of how people judge each other, how people, just like your situation. I mean, the unkindness of that one guy, like such an intense statement comes, I know there is pain in him, but I'm saying it's still, he was judging you guys, right? In that moment, like you guys are incredibly kind men, but he brought all of his stuff to you in a really hateful way. So just, anger and how you can be in such a huge city. And I mean, that's the thing about New York City is there's so many people. And then just to see at times that people aren't even aware of each other. They don't see each other and how we struggle as humans to be kind and considerate. So I think that's the wheel.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both so much. And thank you for sharing that story. I think that a lot of people need to be reminded of that lesson, both for themselves and then also for those that they interact with, that we should be more gracious and curious about other people's experiences and to hold space for them in their pain versus casting the judgment. So thank you to all of our listeners. If you have not yet downloaded the Core Emotion Wheel, I highly encourage you to do that. There'll be a link in the show notes, and that's what gets you in tune with what is happening for you. So when that emotion hits, because it will, you will know what's happening for you. You won't get lost in it. The tension that your body is feeling, you'll be able to pinpoint that and not walk around feeling like there's a weight on your back. So definitely download that Core Emotion Wheel. We are heading into the holidays, so there's going to be a lot of emotions happening for a lot of people. And if you have not already left us a 5-star review, please do so. They do help us absolutely tremendously. And we do all of this because
you need this.
You deserve this. So let's do this.
Let's do this.